Hello and welcome. My name is Errity Green and this is Wise Woman Oracle and Tarot. And today I am bringing you a pick a card reading on the single greatest triumph of your life. So I was going to share why I decided to do this video, although I might just share it in the piles. It's more or less because I feel like sometimes we're thinking we're in the thick of it, or that it's been like a long, hard haul. And at the end of the day, oftentimes there's a big triumph or a main theme or lesson that we are learning. And usually the thing that we want most will put us on the track of that great hero or heroine's quest of our lives that ultimately leads us to that greater awareness of and full expression of our own souls. And so that's why I wanted to share on this one today. I do hope you stick around and pick a pile to get your reading. Of course, if you do find you like your reading and you do like this channel and you come around every now and again or regularly to watch a reading, I invite you to like, to subscribe, as well as press the bell icon. That way you receive notifications when new readings pop up. And of course, I always want to let you know that I do offer both personal readings as well as coaching programs to support you in your life and your work and on your spiritual path. Right now, I have a really awesome program out. It's called Be and Do You, Babe. It's primarily for spiritual entrepreneurs who want to make impact in the world in an authentic way. So check that out. You can check out those details below, or all the other details for working with me at erritygreen.com. So without further ado, we will get started. I will place a picture up of your 4 card piles to choose from today. Please note my piles are, they start on the left, just like if you were reading an English email or book or paper, from left to right. So 1 is on the left and it goes 2, 3, 4 is going to be on your far right. All right, we will display those now. All right, so card pile 1, the single most greatest triumph of your life. Is that what I called it? We'll see. Single greatest triumph of your life. Okay, so card pile 1, this is all about you taking full control of your life. And this doesn't mean, when I say control, I don't mean like, you know, that you're really hyper controlling and demanding and all of that stuff. No implications here. Just that you decide to take back the reins and take back power, take back your own power of your life. You realize that you are the one who decides. You are the one who chooses. You are the one who can pick this or that, or this person or that person, or this career or that occupation or this setting or this environment or this relationship. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's all up to you. Now, this doesn't mean that everyone is handed the same hand of cards when they are born. That's not at all what this video is saying, but it's saying ultimately where you end up and how you live your life and how all of that looks, including your relationships and your experiences, is up to you. So you might be someone who has struggled in your life either in the past or currently, or will, or notice that this is a big common thread in your life, that maybe you feel like you get like a hard deal, or like things don't work out for you, or like, why do these kind of people involve you in your life, or like, why is it that only certain kinds of people come into your life, or you only experience certain type of relationships, or things just don't happen for you the way they happen for other people, right? This is kind of like that ego mind commentary that we can all get lost with on occasion, but it's like you might very well believe it and succumb to it. So there's a flavor of that victimhood here, and there's no judgment. We all have an inner victim. We all have an inner child. I tend to believe that our inner victim and our inner child are actually one and the same. And that's why we feel victimized, because we're operating and feeling occupied by a child. But when we grow into and develop into our empowered adult mature selves, we can navigate our life much more effortlessly, as well as our feelings and relationships and communication, all the things that are required to really live a purposeful, meaningful life. So for you, I do feel like in some ways or cases you have been victimized. So I want to make that distinction clear between victimhood and victimization. Victimization is very real. That happens in the 3D. I can't even touch on it. Like horrendous, horrific things happen on planet Earth, and who would ever argue that? Victimization is very real. I'm feeling like for at least a small portion of you, you've experienced some kind of victimization. I am feeling some kinds of abuse in childhood. and I don't know what kind, although it does feel like it could have been physical or sexual for some of you. But at some point or another in your life, you might have experienced victimization, and that piece is real. Now, here's the thing though. Ultimately, if you want something different from your life, you're going to have to recognize that it's a choice to then live in victimhood for a lifetime. Okay? And what does victimhood for a lifetime mean or look like? That can look like always blaming somebody else or a situation or the other thing or the other person or the relationship, or even you're having experiences today that are far off from your childhood, and you're pointing back to your childhood and saying, this is what this did to me, this is what those people did to me. But there is a recognition here that the greatest triumph of your life is mastering this, is recognizing that you might not have had a choice as a child, or whatever kind of victimization experiences you have experienced, card pile 1, whether it was childhood abuse or something else, or just, over the course of your life, a lot of kind of prone to freak accidents and random things occurring, and gosh, all these terrible people show up in my life, and what for? So whatever flavor or experience that you had, the common theme or thread is about mastering this and recognizing ultimately you get to decide how this goes from here. Maybe you didn't have a choice as a child, and maybe you didn't feel like you had much of a choice when you were unconscious or asleep. But now that you are awake to a certain degree, you're here, you're on this channel, you're conscious, you're well enough to be here. Clearly you're aware, and clearly you're connected. And so now you have the power. Now you have the choice. Once you're aware, how your life goes is always up to you. Once you're aware. When you're sort of unconscious and living asleep on planet Earth, a lot of things happen in unconsciousness, and there's no excuse for it still. Of course, we can't just give everyone, the get out of jail free card just because they're asleep. But at the end of the day, you're more of a quote unquote victim, we'll say, or you're less responsible for your life because you're not even aware that you are the creator. And I think that's really the point. So your single greatest triumph is coming into your own power, is coming into the great recognition that you are your own creator. I'm feeling like some of you have already mastered this, and so all of this is landing for you, and you're like, and yes, and thank God, because that's over, I've mastered that. But there are some of you who might still be working through this, or still haven't jumped that hurdle at all, and perhaps this is bringing you some clarification today as to how you might experience what you ultimately want to experience in your everyday life. So there is something here about becoming your own beacon, becoming your own person, like rising again. Part of this too is not allowing other people to hurt you or to victimize you. Now, we don't necessarily always get a choice in that matter. But what we do get a choice in is whether we continue to engage with someone who is hostile, violent, abusive, toxic, dysfunctional, and unhealthy. If someone always or often, more often than not, makes us feel bad, they don't belong in our lives. If something always or often, like a career or occupation or a role that you play, or maybe your family or whatever, if it always or often feels bad, they might not belong in your life. That's going to be up to you. That's not something a YouTube reading can tell you. But I do encourage you to explore how you might be perpetuating victimization or victimhood by the choices that you make in terms of choosing this kind of role, this kind of job, this kind of person, or this kind of lifestyle, when you make those choices knowing what you're going to get. You may not have known before, but you certainly know now if you're in the middle of it or have been there. Some of you, though, have broken through this hurdle, and there's a massive breakthrough in determining and coming to that deep recognition of, oh, like, I'm the one who decides how this goes. Awesome! And it probably is much bigger than that, maybe even more emotionally cathartic than that. But this is your incredible triumph, is taking back your own power, the reins of your life, and taking creative control of your life so that you can dictate how it goes, how it feels, and how fulfilling it is for you. Haha. Card pile 1. I love these. So let me show you these first cards because I think they are fun, and I really want to make these clear today. So take a look. These cards, what we've been talking about here. And take a look at these cards, where we're talking about single greatest triumph. Now we're moving on to actually making the necessary changes that you know need to be made. But clearly, card pile 1, it looks like your patterns are defaulting to apathy, non-movement, not doing the thing, not following through on the thing, not being able to complete the thing, you know? It's like you might start something, but you don't finish it. So it's a matter of actually making those changes, right? So not just being aware and knowing, oh, well, I should do this. That would be really great for me. Oh, and gosh, this relationship isn't that great for me. And I know it's really unhealthy, but I have a bunch of reasons why I could or should stay. But I know I need to go, but I stay anyway. Or like, I know this career is like total dog shit and it's not serving me whatsoever, and they don't see my value, but I don't want to put in the effort to like go to school again and study and all that stuff, or like learn a whole new career and like start from the bottom. So it's a lot of that kind of stuff. Of course, it's going to take form in your life, and whatever form that it takes form in your life, you know, take what resonates, leave the rest. But there's something here about holding back and not actually following through. But of course, so that's might be where you're at. Again, for a small minority of you, you've already been through this, and this is just, you know, acknowledgement and validation of kind of where you've been. But for many of you, you're still on this journey, and you're being encouraged to make those moves, make those necessary changes, make those choices, and take the action necessary to actually make changes in your life so that it does look different, so that it does feel different, so that you do experience different, and that it's ultimately up to you. But the single greatest triumph of your life is coming into mastery with this. It is making those moves and making those necessary changes to realize your full potential. That is available for you. That door is wide open for you. If you haven't already walked through it, please know it's here for you, and it always will be here for you, because your soul's journey, path, and purpose / potential was meant for you to walk through that door. It wasn't to stay here forever. It was to learn what it's like to kind of go from the bottom to the, from the bottom into experiencing your fullest potential and to experience your greater potential, right? It was a matter of you kind of learning what it's like to have to come from maybe a difficult background or challenging experiences or victimization or whatever form your circumstances took. And it was learning that you can still realize your potential, that you can still live a meaningful, purposeful, even enjoyable and satisfactory life. So let's see here. I'm just taking a look at these cards and sitting with them for a moment. Give me 1 second. Single greatest triumph of your life. Yeah, let me pull a clarifier card on this one. Yeah, so we already know this. Again, this is about taking back the control. We even got the control card, and we have awareness. So that single greatest triumph, then, of course, this is already kind of summarizing what we're talking about, right? You're coming into greater awareness. You're coming into greater knowing and clarity. You're recognizing the patterns. You're seeing where you've perpetuated or made choices that resulted in these experiences or results that you continue to experience that you don't want. And you're taking back the control. You're taking back the power. And I feel like here, I almost want to read from this deck. It's very rare that I do this because I read intuitively, as you know. But I feel like there's a deeper meaning here that wants to come through the actual card. So give me a moment here. This is the Sacred Rebels deck, Sacred Pool. And like I said, I usually read intuitively. But for you all, it feels relevant for some reason to do it this way. So we're going to do it this way. I think there might be something in here for you. Okay, Sacred Fool. I'm just going to read a little bit of it, and we'll go from there. The Fool is a great rebel, able to thwart convention and tell the truth without restraint. Your heart is a wonderful, powerful, sacred fool. It cares not for the right way to do things. It cares not for what the mind says is real and not real. It lives according to an inner wisdom that cannot be dictated to or controlled by anything. See? It loves, it lives, and it is what it is. This oracle heralds a time, now or imminent, when you will feel inspired, alive, and passionate for what you can offer to the world. It says to you, don't try to be appropriate. Don't try to be socially acceptable and worry about what others may think about what you are doing. Just be. If you want to wear a mad hat whilst doing so, fine. The sacred fool in you is willing to leave behind what has been because it no longer feels right to stay attached to it. The sacred fool in you trusts life completely. It would never occur to this part of you to try and outsmart life or resist its flow. It recognizes that the mind is a monkey puppet on strings. More often than not, it is cajoled into fear when it could be playfully dwelling in the radical spontaneity of life. So the sacred fool in you urges your mind to let itself be pulled into joy by your heartstrings, not into fear and doubt. It's time for you to play. It's time for you to let life happen in a completely unreserved, unscripted way. Let's see. So there was a part that came through for me. 1 second here. Okay, so what was coming through for me, so some of that might land for you uniquely in terms of what I shared. So if it did, excellent. But for those of you where you're like, oh, I'm not really sure how that lands. So the energy that came through for me when I was sharing on this is life has been trying to bring you into this greater potential for some time, and or it's been giving you at least the invitation or the opportunity. It doesn't feel like it's been ignored or neglected. It feels like, perhaps you're still holding on to those old things, those old ways, those old lifestyles, people, environment, whatever. And so again, some of you have already mastered this and you're just getting this awareness. Maybe it took you a while to gain the strength and the sort of perseverance to move through this, to navigate and to come out on the other side. But for those of you who are still in it or will be in this space, because it's even saying like the door is open, just like I said, that's what that was saying, like it's time. You can leave this behind. It's no longer relevant for you. You're choosing it now, right? Life is no longer keeping you capped or limited within this box and saying you must stay here. You are not imprisoned by these circumstances. You might think that you are, or you might think that not recognize if anything is worth it on the other side, especially if you haven't experienced a lot of joy or fulfillment. You're like, well, what's the point? That's a lot of work for what? Because I don't even know what exists on the other side. And yet, if that's what that card is saying in the book, it's also saying like the door is open, the portal is here, you can leave at any time. And that's kind of the vibe that I was sharing too. There is a recognition, there is more on the other side. And I think you got that too, right? Joy, play, spontaneity, meaning, heart. It's being willing to even take those risks, to leave some of this behind or all of it behind or whatever, to see what's on the other side. Just like on those old game shows, right? They had the closed doors and you didn't know what was on the other side, and then you had to pick a door and you had to go for it. And that's kind of the vibe here, is you might not even know what's on the other side or even if it'll be worth it to you. Hint/clue over here, it is. Because we're kind of already being given that vibe, because ultimately what you discover on the other side of that door, or this journey, even if it takes longer than just opening that door, right? That one move, that one choice, you ultimately discover your own potential. You ultimately discover your own sacred power. You ultimately get to be the decider of your life. You ultimately find more peace, joy, satisfaction, and fulfillment, and coming to the knowingness and realization of your own self, not to mention being able to create from that place and to accomplish whatever ambitions or aspirations you have from that place. So your single greatest triumph, card pile 1, is very much about coming into your power and coming into greater, influence over your life experience. That you get to experience more. You get to have more of what you want. You get to experience satisfactory and fulfilling relationships and a meaningful career and meaningful connections, whatever that looks like for you. You get to experience it. It's in your hands, and the door is wide open for you to walk through if you haven't already made this triumph happen. So card pile 1, if this lands for you, I encourage you to share your story below. I'd love to hear the details in the comments. Do like, subscribe, press the bell icon if you aren't already subscribed. And of course, I do offer both personal readings as well as coaching programs to support you in your life and your work and on your spiritual path. You can check out those details below and at erritygreen.com. Thank you. Card pile 1. Okay, card pile 2. The single greatest triumph of your life is bringing forth a success for something that you have long since worked for. So you've been on an endeavor, maybe for years. Some of you, it feels like a decade, maybe some of you for longer, but you have been on this sort of arduous journey of on a path to materialize something or to manifest something or to experience something that you know is true, that you know is real, that you know is real in your heart and possible and available for you, and yet it hasn't yet or will soon, it feels like, for those of you it hasn't yet happened for, will come through, will manifest, you will achieve this. Now, the single greatest triumph of your life is bringing this into manifestation, and the reason is because you have been so committed, so devoted, so loyal to this path. There's so much energy of that whole hero/heroine's journey, where it's like I opened with, that thing that you want the most tends to put you on the track or put you in alignment with your soul's, your greater awareness of your own soul and your soul's fullest expression. It's like because you wanted this thing so bad, whatever it is, right? For a lot of people, it's a love relationship, romantic relationship. For some people, it's some level of health. For some people, it's climbing Mount Everest. For some people, it's material wealth or success or recognition and success in their field. For some people, it's having a child and raising a family, okay? And oftentimes the thing that you want the most is what eludes you. And the reason is it's meant to bring about that great hero/heroine's journey or quest that helps you to know your own soul, right? What's that Rumi quote about eventually all desires cease to exist except for the one to know your own soul, and really all desires are to know one's own soul. So it's like you go on this hero or heroine's journey, that's what you've been on, and it was almost like it played the role of the carrot for you, and that as long as you were on this path and sort of going after that carrot, not that it has to be phrased or visualized that way, but you know, as long as you were seeking that out, spirit, your soul, higher self, whatever, knew that you would do the necessary work to get there. So you would do the inner healing, you would do the inner child healing, you would do the shadow work, the whatever, like whatever this path required, you were going to do it, because you're going to achieve this no matter what. Like, you were dead set on this. It's 100% happening. It's also part of your path and your destiny, not your death. It's part of your path and your destiny to experience this, but part of the journey, well, really the whole point of the journey was the journey itself. It's like, yes, success is what you wanted, and that was sort of the carrot to get your human on board to fulfill this greater destiny, to fulfill this greater path, to fulfill this hero or heroine's journey, this vision quest of your life, where you are able to then learn everything that you came here to learn and experience. So you've been on this path and wondering why in the world, why, how, it didn't happen yet, like this is ridiculous, and it's because it's the one thing that you want the most. And it ensured the quest of all quests. It ensured that you come into your own. It ensured that you came into your own power. It ensured that you came to know yourself deeply. It ensured that you did the work to be able to come into greater intimacy and communion with others, with God, self, spirit, you know, that you would just know self, realize self, actualize and express self with a capital S. And so the good news is your success has happened. And some of you might have already experienced that. And so I feel like it's more so the majority of you have not, and you're on here and you might not even been thinking about this necessarily, unless you were thinking like, why hasn't this happened? I'm going to check out, what is this triumph? Is that what I need? I need a triumph. So the single greatest triumph of your life is coming into this greater success that you have sought. And it doesn't have to be a long time, although it very well could be for many of you. More or less, I feel a lot of effort, a labor of love, continually returning to a path, devoted to something, committed to something, loyal to bringing something through, something forward. And for many of you, it hasn't manifested yet. For many of you, you're on the cusp of manifesting this. You're right there. You're right there on the edge, you know. Centimeters dilated, 8. You're at 8 centimeters, all right? Maybe 9, actually. As soon as I said 8. You know, anytime I say something, I'll just be corrected. So 9 centimeters you guys are at. You got 1 centimeter left. For many of you, I can't say for all of you, but for many of you, 40%, 25%. So about 25% of you feel like you're right on the edge. And for the rest of you, this is a destiny. This is a part of your life. So it's not something you can get around or avoid. So you don't have to worry that it's not going to happen for you. If you've chosen card pile 2, success is inevitable for you. It was meant to be part of your path. There was a very clear knowing, if not soul contract and agreement, for you to be on this quest toward greater success. That way it would ensure the work that you've done to get here. So beautiful work that you've done this and that you've stuck to the path for so long. But yeah, your single greatest triumph is going to be bringing about that success and materializing and manifesting that you've been working to achieve for however long, and or however, I don't want to say difficult, but you put the foot to the pavement, we'll say, card pile 2. Yeah, exactly what I was saying. So you had to do the healing work to get here. You had to do the growth work to get here. You had to do the evolutionary work to get here. So take a look at these cards. It was always about, there's a couple things that are coming up here in terms of your path, your single greatest triumph. It's about coming into, it's an inner child healing, but it's also about really connecting with your inner child and their desires, like what they truly want. That sense of awe, freedom, wonder, innocence, enjoyment. So I'm trying to see what's come through first. So in terms of inner child healing, I feel like both of those are connected, inner child healing and connecting with their desires. But it's sort of like two different paths where it's like doing that necessary inner work to heal, to grow. So whatever you might have experienced as a child, whether it was traumatic or otherwise, whether it was dysfunctional or otherwise, we all enter a world 3D. None of us are immune to the human condition. We experience our fair share of wounding, and whatever it was that you were carrying, you were meant to heal that through this journey. So no doubt for most of you, you've at least encountered this already, where you have now faced some of your old demons and shadows you didn't maybe even know were there for a time, and they've come around the bend to say hello. And it's like on this journey, you had to face all of those. It reminds me of like the Disney movies or the story of Inanna, where it's like you're going into the underworld and you're having to face all of your own demons and shadows and monsters, and you're defeating them one by one, right? You know, and you're defeating them and you're defeating them and you're defeating them. Card pile 2, you've been defeating them and defeating them and defeating them. And like I said, this is a labor of love for you, where you've really just, you know, you've been devoted and loyal to this path and doing that work. And so much of it, again, was coming into that greater connection, union, communion with self, and really recognizing your own vulnerability as well, I feel. Some of your maybe emotional tenderness and softness that you might not have contacted before having to give up your defenses and your armor. It feels like life might have broken many of you, if not all of you, who chose card pile 2 at one point or another. Life broke you. And you want to be shared, right now what wants to be shared with you in terms of that is that the reason life broke you was to break down your defenses and your armor so you could find your own vulnerability underneath. So you could really find yourself. So you could finally hold that inner child that was sort of like wailing, tantruming, and screaming for your attention that probably long since went ignored because you were focused on success. And I relate to this. There's no judgment there. You know, it doesn't matter. You know, this is the whole point and path of your life. Like, this is what we do, right? This is the human journey. And so you were meant to find this emotional tenderness within, and as soon as you contacted that emotional tenderness, that's all that was needed to then catalyze. It's like it lit a fire on this path. It's like, you know, when you have gasoline, you light a fire and then really quickly, like almost instantaneously. It's not instantaneous, but it is, because you can kind of see it happen linearly, where it's like the flame starts here and then it starts moving, but it's so fast because it's all so flammable. It's like almost instantaneous, but it's not. And so it's like as soon as you found that emotional vulnerability, things started lighting up and lighting up the path to where you're actually meant to go. Not that you were ever off path, because you actually feel like you're in full alignment, and you have been, but there was something here, I don't want to say it was missing, but it was almost like that's actually what you wanted. You were never going to find satisfaction, true fulfillment on the path you were seeking, especially toward success. It would have been more empty for you, more sterile, less meaningful, had you not awakened this deeper tenderness, emotional vulnerability, and softness within yourself. So by allowing that part to be in the journey, now it kind of lit this path of a flame or a blaze, you know, and now you're walking your path towards success with a greater version of you, like more of your own wholeness, right? You're carrying your own emotional vulnerability now. You're carrying your own tenderness and your inner child, and you're also carrying its dreams, its whims, its fancies. What did your inner child want for you? What were your joys and passions when you were a child? How did you like to play? What were the things when you were given the choice to choose an activity? What did you choose? When it could go your way, if you were given a yes day as a kid, which would never have happened in our generation. Am I wrong? Am I right? But if you were given a yes day as a kid, what would you have said? Look at those activities. See when did you feel like you were in your element? When did you feel best expressed? When did you feel alive? So part of the purpose in contacting the inner child and its inner dreams and passions was to support you again in bringing more fulfillment to your path. And here's what's interesting for you, pile 2, that I'm getting very, very clearly. At times you've wondered about your path. You've questioned it. You've doubted it. You weren't sure because it wasn't happening. You know, maybe you've had a little of this or a little of that, or a little of this or a little of that, but nothing compared to the labor and effort and devotion that you've put into this thing. And here's the deal. It was never that you were off track. You've always been in alignment. You've always been doing it right. You've been right on par. But here's the thing. Without bringing those other elements into it, it wasn't going to be fulfilling for you. And ultimately, you wanted something that was more emotionally meaningful and fulfilling. You wanted something that was more satisfactory. You wanted something that felt good inside. So in order for that to be realized, these other pieces had to be brought on board. It couldn't be just you doing the thing, you know, kind of superficially, like your defense and armor doing all the things, like your ego identity at the kind of superficial level doing the thing. What about all the other parts of you? And for those parts of you to be on board, you had to go through this journey of even that self-healing, inner child healing, all that deeper, inner, darker stuff. That had to happen so you could bring these other pieces on board so that this path would be more meaningful, fulfilling to you. So it was never that you were off track. You've been on the right track, okay? You know, don't doubt that. It was that there was a piece that was missing. Let's say it was like a 100-piece puzzle. There was a very clear, it was like you had this whole puzzle here. And gosh, it looked really good. It looked really great on paper and everything felt pretty good. But there was always one little piece that was missing when you were honest. And a puzzle is incomplete without that final piece. That final piece was this. So through that experience when life broke you, it was to bring about a connection with your deeper tenderness, your softer parts, you know, the aching human, you know, that we all have, the inner child, as well as your inner child's dreams, so that you could bring these into your work, into your path, whatever path yours is. I'm not getting any of that, and it's not even relevant because it's not coming through. I don't want to lose track, but I do want to share that. You were meant to infuse your path with these things. Are you following me? And I'm going to repeat this. Why? Because it's a very much pronounced and emphasized here that it was never about doing something different, doing something that looks different, you know, packaging it in a different way, or saying it or doing it or whatever in a different way. Oh, I might have to, maybe I need to change direction. Maybe I need to go back to school. Maybe I need a program, whatever. I don't know what you guys tell yourself. I don't know what you're doing because I'm not getting any of that. But you've been on a path and you've been loyal and devoted to it for a long time. You've put in the time, the effort, and the fruits of your labor have not been fully materialized. And the reason is, it's almost like you were going this way and you turned and redirected back to you so that you could blossom and flower and mature and bring forth these other elements, so that as you continued on the same path, it looks the same in form, but it's totally different functionally speaking, because it now has your dreams, your passions, and your joy on board, as well as your emotional tenderness, compassion. It's like you brought, more or less, if we were to put it very simply, and this doesn't even do it justice, you brought the feminine on board with the masculine. So with your endeavor to success prior to this, you've been very focused, you know, again, on that masculine linear way of I do this, and I accomplish this, and I achieve that, and I create this, and I produce that. And it was very much like that. But what you were finding, whether you were honest with yourself at the time or even now or not, is that was missing that piece, right? It was that emotional fulfillment piece. There was something missing. When you go back and you look and you're honest with yourself, there was something missing. It was always this. And so you were redirected. You turned back to yourself to uncover this part of yourself and to bring that element, inner child, healing, all the things that happened through you during this time, that feminine awakening, we can say, just keep it really simple, and that, like I said, does not do it full justice, so you can bring the feminine on board too with your path. And so that's when that flame ignited, and now everything is it's quickening, whether you can see it or not or whatever. The more you can contact your passions, your dreams, your joys of your inner child, the more you can allow that vulnerability, that tenderness, that softness to be on board in your work path, whatever it is that you're doing. It doesn't even have to be work, whatever that success path is, whatever path you're on, because that's what you're trying to create. The more you can bring that on board, the quicker you're going to materialize and manifest. And that's not what Spirit wants to say. It's like, is it accelerated? It just brings things into alignment. So, which can lead to, of course, something that's more quick. But I guess in terms of time, that doesn't want to be said. Okay. So, yeah, your single greatest triumph, card pile 2. We're not even done yet. We're almost there. You do manifest that, materials, that success. It was meant to put you on this vision quest of your life, this hero or heroine's journey that was going to bring about a greater evolution, growth, and healing for yourself. It was going to bring you into greater union with self, with soul, with all parts of you, and bring all of that on board to take this journey together. So you weren't severing or disconnecting a part of yourself in order to do this. And ultimately, it's what you valued, because you're a spiritually empowered person. It wasn't going to be enough for you without that. Also, the part of your path is letting go of these old insecurities, letting go of this old issues of self-worth, letting go of maybe any kind of vibes of, you know, feeling like an outsider, that you don't belong, or that you aren't appreciated, or you aren't recognized, or whatever. It feels like a part of your path, sort of releasing a smaller identity or a smaller version of you. And here's the thing about that. It's like, you know, some of the thought commentary I gave you are just examples, but I actually don't have, sometimes a very clear thought commentary in terms of the different forms that it takes. If you guys follow my channel, you know that. But for your case, it's just feeling like there was a smaller version of you that's also being released. And I feel like could have been tied to childhood, or tied to experiences of feeling inferior or not belonging, could be tied to the family of origin. But the number one thing you need to know is that your single greatest triumph is also mastering this, is overcoming this, is releasing the ties to a smaller version of you, because it's ultimately not true. You go through, again, that change, that metamorphosis. I think I showed these, didn't I? Let's take a look at that inner child, healing the shadow work, the inner work, as well as moving toward your heart's desires through the inner child. And then we have this final set of cards where we have releasing allegiances and Thunderbolt, or I'm sorry, Thunderbolt. We do have a Thunderbolt card, I think, someone in transformation. But what it's telling me is you were meant to alchemize a lot of this. I feel like the only reason you have a part, this is supposed to feed your success path too, and God, I'm so glad I'm getting all of this for you. It's very detailed. For heaven's sake, this is like a private reading. Card pile 2, if that's the case, you need to comment below because it feels very, very detailed, especially for card pile 2 here. The reason you had this small version of self, it was never meant to be for you. It was never meant to be true for you. It was never meant to be your truth, your identity. It was never meant to be something that you identify with or believe to be true or carry with you like it's your baggage of feeling like an outsider, feeling inferior, feeling unworthy, not feeling seen. Again, kind of probably a lot of after effects or residual effects of not materializing what it is that you want, or that was at least, probably even confirming some of your already limiting beliefs from childhood or whatever. But however it looked and played out for you, the small version of self was only meant to inform your path. So what I mean by that is, when we're talking about, remember we talked about your vulnerability and your tenderness and your inner child and all of that, bring that on board to serve and support you in your path to success and realizing and manifesting greater success. You feel of recognition, success, wealth, material wealth, that kind of thing. Maybe even fame for some of you, fame and fortune, or at least it doesn't feel like worldwide fame, but it feels like fame well enough that you would consider fame, being well known or well renowned or world renowned. Is that what it is? Whatever. I promise I'm smart. I don't know. Sometimes we don't know. All of that to say, the small version of yourself was meant to make you, it's going to help your path to success. Now, because I don't know what form your path to success takes, it's difficult to sort of apply it or integrate it. So you might have to do it for yourself. However, what I can give as an example, just because I want to give an example so you know what I mean by this, in coaching, which I do coaching, and so I'm familiar with it, I'm going to use that example. What it's saying is your small self was only meant to be able to make you not necessarily relatable, but sort of to other humans. It was to help people see that you're just like them, or it was to make you like relatable. It was to connect you to your own humanity. There is something here. I really would like it to come through. Let me see if I can give it a moment and see if it does. So this is about your small self supporting your success, and the only, right, we're releasing that, any ties or attachment or bondage to that in terms of feeling stuck in small self or limited self. However, the reason it came through was to support you to, it was like connect more with your audience, to connect more with other people, to be able to connect, to have a bridge or a tunnel or something to be able to connect with others. It was to, it's like I have the energy but I don't have the words. Hold on, let me see what I can get. So the best way I can describe this, it was so that other people could see themselves in you. They needed to be able to see themselves in you. So your whatever your path is to success likely, well, first of all, they always include other people because that's just how this world works. Everything's interdependent. But especially some of you are going to probably identify as a service provider of some kind, or someone who helps people or supports people in some way, whether directly or indirectly. I would say more service-based than product-based, although even if it's something product-based that you do, if we're talking occupation and career, still involves, HR, other people, a team. But it was always so. The small self was never meant for you to carry as your identity. Please take the attire off. Just like any belief, we can take it off, and then we continue to make choices that align with a higher version of ourselves. It was always meant just so that other people could see themselves in you. And part of that, it feels like, in terms of being relevant, is if people can't see themselves in you and they think of you sort of like as on another planet or totally different or unrelatable, people are unlikely to, let's just say if you are a service provider of some kind, to purchase or buy something from that person, to trust them. You probably won't have a community. You won't have really too great of a message. People don't connect with you. They don't really get it. So people have to relate and relate to you in order for success to be realized. So I hope that helps. I know I stuck around for a little bit extra time there talking about that in particular, but I really wanted to get that message articulated for you because I think it's important. And that change was going to also help amplify or bring about that greater success. Now, do we have like a final outcome card for everybody? I just want, I feel like it's like, I don't know. Why do I keep wanting more for card pile 2? I don't know. Well, I feel like I'm being stopped. So Sometimes if I go to pull the deck and it's like, I don't know if any of you guys are readers. If you are, you know what I'm talking about, where it's like you go to pull something and it's like, no. So all of that said, card pile 2. Let's do a quick review. Your greatest triumph yet. Your single greatest triumph is coming into that greater success that you have worked for a long time. Whether through time or through effort, you have been journeying on a labor of love. It was always meant to help reveal more of yourself to you. And your greater triumph is coming through that period where life might have broken you at one point or another, big or small, but it helped you return to yourself, to awaken parts of you that needed to be awakened in order for this path to be ultimately fulfilling for you and maybe even successful. It could have been required for your success, because what we get in that final piece is part of your work was connecting with your inner vulnerability and the smaller self and becoming aware of that. And even though it's not meant to be something that you carry with you, because keeping yourself limited will hold you back from that success, but it was something that you were meant to uncover and become aware of and speak to, because that's how people relate to and connect with you. So card pile 2, if this lands, resonates, I encourage you to share your story below. Do like, subscribe, press the bell icon. That way you receive notifications every single time a video pops up. I do, of course, offer both personal readings as well as coaching programs to support you in your life, in your work, and on your spiritual path. You can check out those details below or at erritygreen.com. Thank you, card pile 2. Okay, card pile 3. These have been amazing readings. Amazing, amazing readings. So card pile 3, your single greatest triumph, okay? All right, so I feel like card pile 3, you've been kind of talking about for a long time. You've wanted to do something, you've wanted to move towards something, you've wanted to build something, create something, achieve something, accomplish something. And yet, you for whatever reason, you haven't done it. You haven't put your money where your mouth is. You haven't done the thing, said the thing. You haven't done the things or taken the steps required and actually bring this back to life. Now here, or bring it, not back to life, but to life. But I do feel like that's relevant, because this is what brings you to life. So you might be seeking greater self-expression, satisfaction, or meaning in your life in some way, greater, deeper fulfillment. You might not even know what that is. You might not be able to pinpoint it. You might be someone who actually is quite grateful for their lives and content, but you might feel a nagging feeling or a tug every once in a while, and that's this thing. The one thing that you've been ignoring, the elephant in the room, the thing that you keep saying you're going to do that you never do, that you haven't done, or that you haven't fully followed through on. For some of you, I'm feeling like it's some kind of project, creative work. This could be like writing a book. Some of you want to write a children's book. Some of you want to write a memoir. I feel like some of you, this could be business related, where you really want to go out there and share yourself. But I am feeling a lot of art, a lot of artistic expression, a lot of creative expression. I'm feeling like you've all been saying, like, all right now as I'm saying this, like I'm just getting all the people I know who are artists. They're flying through my head. And I'm like, so it's crazy. Like, if any of you do this work and, you know, you do, you know, divination or whatever, I always wonder how it works for other people, but it's like, putting words to this is actually like a job, man, you know, where it's like, I'm speaking all this stuff, but I'm also getting tons of other information at this exact same time, as well as all the people I know who are artists. And it's just showing me all the different people who are artists and what they do. And I'm seeing what they do, and I'm seeing what they want. I'm feeling what they want, and I'm feeling their ego, and I'm feeling, you know, all that stuff. So it's pretty wild as humans that we're able to like filter and process that much information and then speak to something totally different at the same time. So that's just a fun little tidbit for you, card pile 3. It might even be relevant for that to come through at the moment, but ultimately, card pile 3, you've been speaking about doing something, saying you're going to do something. You're like one of those people who's like, I don't want to say you're the boy who cried wolf, because it's not like that. It doesn't have that vibe. It more, some of you, it feels like sort of like this lofty kind of daydream that's sort of so ethereal because there's been no form put to it, that you know, it almost feels like a fantasy, you know, something that you've actually never taken seriously. But for the majority of you, I'm feeling more of the energy of you've actually said, I am going to do this, or I'm going to do this, or you have done it and it's been a false start. You haven't finished, you haven't followed through. For a lot of you, it's like very front and center, very present for you. You know this is what you want to do, but daily life or defaulting to old patterns instead becomes your routine, your usual. You just do the same thing you did yesterday, today, right? And some of you, I feel like, have obligations. You have responsibilities. Maybe you have a full-time job or a full-time family, but there's something there where you can easily say to yourself and excuse yourself and shelve this dream. You say, oh, well, you know, I would do that or I could do that, but I have these other priorities. And you use that as your scapegoat for not taking responsibility for your dream. Because the reality is, anyone who goes on a new journey, like a new beginning, a new endeavor, they go on a new path and they go to create or accomplish or achieve something, I would venture to say 98% of those people, at least the majority of people, they have their other plates are already full. It is extra to them. I don't know anyone who's had no job and they're just sitting around and they say, you know what, I'm going to start my art, or I'm going to launch this business after all. And then they have 40 hours a week to dedicate to it. No, it doesn't happen. Everybody has the same constraints generally, or, that you do, or that I do. And, so like, card pile 3, you might tend to use that as like your excuse or your scapegoat, but ultimately I think we both know that's not true. If that's not true for you, that's cool, but for those of you it is, that feels relevant, so I want to speak to it, that those responsibilities are real, they're true, they're valid, and if this was the priority that you say it is, you would be bringing it to fruition. So there's something else there, and I do feel like there might be a block. And that's why this becomes your single greatest triumph, because you do break through this. You do break through this. Some of you feel like you've hit against this wall so many times, and I feel like some of you might have even just maybe even given up on the dream or said, never mind. I do feel like for some of you, and I'm just being honest because we have the free will and we can change it. If this is here, number one, this is your soul's path and soul's journey, meaning you are meant to bring this to life. You are meant to bring this into form. You are meant to do this. So I want to start by saying that you are meant to, and it's what you said you were going to do as a soul. So that's number one. But ultimately as humans, we have free will. You may very well not. Life will keep bringing you lessons to try to get you on path, but you don't have to listen. Life could bring a horse to water. It might not drink. All right. With that said, some of you will still choose and may never choose to actually bring this to fruition. And I'm saying that because I think for some of you, you don't realize that your self-sabotage can lead to permanence in terms of you could be the one to make it never happen, right? A lot of you might have excuses or, ideas like, oh, that the world won't do it, or this won't happen for me, or whatever, where it's like you kind of externalize it. And so it makes you kind of feel better because it lets you off the hook a little bit, gives you a little bit of relief and breathing room, especially when this dream probably puts a lot of pressure on you sometimes. And so, but it's ultimately you who is going to be the one who makes or breaks this thing. And for some of you, so right now, and the energy is showing, small, I'm seeing like 15%, 10%, where the energy is now, you won't ever achieve this. And the reason I want to share that is not because to condemn you to that or make you feel like it's impossible or just effing forget it or F it then. That's not why. It's because the other side of that, the truer truth of that, is that you have the freaking choice now. You can change that. So if that's where you're headed and that's not the destination you want, when I say that and you immediately feel anger or bitterness, resentment, remorse, or whatever comes up for you, that's your sign to actually do the damn thing then. And the only person who can break through that big old wall is you. It's actually your wall. And I've been saying to each of the card piles, I opened with this. The reason we have these kinds of challenges in our lives is to ensure our great hero/heroine's journey, our great vision quest, our great soul's journey to know ourselves. So you were meant to experience this path. You were meant to hit these walls. You were never meant to give up though. So don't. Most of you have not given up. And this is just a reminder of, oh yeah, she's hit the nail on the head here. I better start holding myself accountable because she's 100% right. So most of you are feeling that, and it's time. If you guys remember that scene from The Lion King when Simba could not escape his fate, am I really going to start crying over here over The Lion King? I mean, I do when it's actually on, but I don't know if I want to in card pile 3 for this reading. But it's like, Rafiki goes to Simba and he's trying to convince him. He's like, no, you're not getting out of this. Oh, I'm here, and he's like, I'm paraphrasing everything. This is not the scene whatsoever. He didn't do any of that. But he's basically not letting Simba out of saying no. He has no choice but to proceed on his own freaking destiny. How can you escape your own destiny? You can't. And so when he knew that Simba was alive, again, he said, it is time. Who knows that line? If you haven't, look it up. It is time. Rafiki, Simba, Lion King, YouTube, do it. Look it up. Watch that scene. It might be important for you. Hopefully it'll awaken something in you. But at the end of the day, number one, it's time, and it's up to you to break through this wall. The whole point was for you to break this wall. And if it doesn't say what the wall is, we'll pull a card on that. But I feel like it might be different for each of you. And you've created this wall almost yourself subconsciously so that you would or could break through it. There might be something there that is materialized or realized as a result. It's almost like if you were to achieve this dream without the wall, you wouldn't have the same level of strength, perseverance, fortitude, and so on and so forth that would be required to sustain whatever this dream or accomplishment or task is. So let me give you an example from my personal experience, because sometimes if I don't get a clear example from one of you, I'll use my own life experiences, so that way we can kind of see what it looks like in practical terms. And so there was a time in my career, so I've done a lot of things. You know, I have been in the field of psychology for 16 years and been a behavior analyst for 12, still certified as a behavior analyst. I work as a coach, and I have worked as a coach now for 6 years. I took a hiatus though during some of those years. And early in my career, I would say or do something and I would get so much flack for it, because I did have an online community and people who followed me, an audience, and people would, you know, just like they do now, except it was way worse now, they try to censor people, silence people, suppress people, shut them up. Cancel culture, basically. It existed then, but it wasn't called cancel culture. It was just as annoying then as it is now. I don't believe in cancel culture, and I tend to say that those who don't like cancel culture were likely the ones who were burned at the stake 200 years ago. I'm probably one of those people, so I'm not a fan of cancel culture. And if you are a fan, hey, to each his or her own. I welcome you to be here. I welcome you to this channel. There's no judgment. There's no one path. But what I will say is at the time, I was like canceled, whatever that is, probably at least a few times. And it was very difficult for me, and it was something that was hard for me to navigate, and something that sort of led to some emotional fallouts or breakdowns at the time. And now fast forward however many years later, 4, 5, 6 years later that it's been, it's like I couldn't care less, you know. It might sting for a minute. It might sit with me while I eat my dinner if someone mean said something on the internet, but I don't give a flying F. So see how there's a difference there? If I were to be catapulted to internet fame, let's say 6 years ago, I probably wouldn't have survived it. Do you see? I wouldn't have. But because I went through what I did, and I journeyed just like you, and we all will, now I am strong enough to be able to own my own power in a sea of noise, or with people throwing tomatoes at me. So the point is, there's something in breaking through this wall, or having that wall there, that is actually meaningful and purposeful for your path, because it's bringing about some traits, qualities, and attributes within yourself, of yourself, that are going to make your dream, vision, project, whatever aspiration much more doable, much more achievable, much more sustainable. It's going to be able to outlast. It's going to be able to produce something, produce results, produce outcomes. You're going to be able to follow through, right? So there's something here in breaking through that wall that you end up carrying with you, right? So it's almost like if you have a big wall in front of you, if we want to use like a fun like analogy, and you had to, let's just say you didn't have any tools, but you knew you had to break down this wall. Like you had to either scale this wall or break it down. And so let's just say, kind of like Tom Hanks in that movie, right, where he ends up alone on the island and he had to kind of fend for himself and figure it all out. You start gathering all sorts of things and whatever, and you build this tool. You know, you're like, okay, now this tool is going to be used to break down this wall. So you build this tool. Once that wall crumbles, now you have that tool to carry with you, and it's going to be with you on your path for other walls that come up. And so there was something here in this wall that was meant to realize something in you. It was another self-expression, realization, actualization of self that was going to actually make this more possible or carry you through. Okay. So part of your path to your single greatest triumph is trusting yourself with this path, trusting yourself and doing it your way, and doing it in an authentic way. So these cards are here, but I don't think that they're and so as it starts to get around 20 minutes for each of the readings, I'm trying to keep it. Let me take a look at what we have left here. So I want to make sure I give you everything you need and not short you on your time, but also not go incredibly over. Just a moment. Okay, so a couple of things that I'll share is, so your single greatest triumph, of course, that you do bring this to life, that you're meant to bring this to life, and that you do take the action to bring it to life. Also, it feels like it is important for you to do it in an authentic way. And of course, any block that was there was meant for you to, it was there and maybe even self-imposed, so that you could flex a muscle that was going to actually help carry you through this whole project from beginning to end. And then this is also about learning to follow the path of your own heart, learning to, you know, do the thing for you, even if it's just for you, even if It doesn't get tons of accolades or recognition or success. So some of you might be seeking, because I knew this was going to go off in 1,000 different directions. That's why I'm like, ah. So some of you are seeking like fame or fortune through this dream, and Spirit wants you to know that while that might be possible for some of you, it might not happen for all of you. And it might, it's actually, as I'm saying that, it's like, no, it very well might happen for all of you. There's no way to know for sure, but what Spirit wants you to know is that it matters that you produced it, even if it doesn't reach the hands or the eyes of 7 billion people. There's something here about materializing and realizing it, knowing that you are worthy enough to do it just because you did it. Does that make sense? There's something here about you being worth it to do this thing. So I think that's coming up because some of you say, oh, well, it's gonna flop anyway, like you tell yourself that, or it's not gonna actually land, or people aren't gonna care, or people aren't gonna buy it, or, you know, if there's something that has to do with other people, it's not gonna be received well, or people aren't gonna see it, so who cares? Like, again, more excuses to why you won't do it or whatever. And what Spirit wants to say, well, it's never for everybody else. This one's for you. So there's something specific here, card pile 3, but this is for you. This is about something with you and your own self journey, your own self-growth journey, self-evolutionary journey, where this is required. It's like, this is a, you know, test that you're meant to pass. You know, this is something that's relevant to your soul's path. We already talked about that in the opening. So it's like, whether or not all these people end up being a part of it, and that's very well a possibility, and that would be a bonus, but it is just a bonus. It's icing on the cake. It's extra. This is actually ultimately, first and foremost, for you. And Spirit wants you to know that. Part of it is because it wants you to know that you are worth it. You are worth the receiving of your own gift. You are worth receiving of your own craft. You are worth receiving of your own expression. You are worth receiving of your own art. Letting you be enough. You be reason enough to create it, pursue it, accomplish it, so on and so forth. It doesn't have to be all these other things for everyone else for it to be worthy, for it to be valuable. Is there anything else that wants to come through here? I do feel like for some of you that there might be here, I'm getting a lot of information in this pile, and I'm really trying to get to all of it. I don't think that I will. Again, all the freaking things that are coming through. So please, if this lands and resonates for you in a very deep, visceral way, and you feel like you didn't get enough, you need support, please reach out to me. I do offer personal readings. I would love to be able to read for you. I don't think I'll get to everything for this particular pile, but I will get to the final couple of things that are here for you. But I know some of you might be like, oh, but if there's more, I want more of it. So do let me know. You can find those details below. Some of you have been offered helping hands. Some of you have been offered support to make this happen. You know, there's been people who have entered right next to you, you know, facing this wall and have been like, I can help you out with it. You know, or someone else who's like, hey, I can help you with this, whether this is, you know, personal, friendship, familiar faces, professional support, whatever, you know, sometimes paid support. So there are helping hands here. If you feel like it's insurmountable, that it's very difficult, that you're not able to create this tool to knock this wall down on your own, take the help. But it's also saying accept it. So some of you have a history or a past of not accepting help with this. It's like, it's your wall and you're going to break it down, and you don't give a shit what anyone else says or thinks about it, and just like, forget it. And maybe you don't have like that kind of a cavalier attitude. You know, you don't have to be Clint Eastwood here, but you know, you might kind of have this attitude is I can do it by myself. And it's like, well, yeah, you can. And I think part of it is following your own rhythm. That's what it says. You know, being honest with yourself, authentic, honest to your true expression, to your heart's desire, to this path, that you are the first and foremost reason this is happening, right? And this was about you. So not about your other tasks and responsibilities and things that you have to do. This was about you from the very beginning, but it is saying there have been many messages for this card, but one of them being that helping hands. It's like letting those people help you, actually letting them help you. If you require help or support, or if the universe is offering you help and support, that means it can help you and it can support you. And instead of denying it or declining it, or just saying, never mind, I'm going to shelve it, Spirit's saying, take the support, accept the help to support you to get this on board. And it does sound like if there is an opportunity in your realm or sphere or helping hand, that you might say yes to it. You might consider saying yes to it. You might consider saying yes to the help to help you make some progress. Again, ultimately, it's going to be up to you, for you, by you. Nobody's going to be able to do it for you. This is your wall, self-imposed. You are meant to break through for all the reasons we already shared. This is your greatest triumph. But it might require support. And if it does, accept the help that is offered to you instead of denying it. So it's saying you can achieve this manifestation. You are meant to. You are meant to bring it forward, because what I'm finding here, oh my gosh, there's so much in these messages, and your reading's already 20 minutes long. Okay, you're meant to bring this forward. And what I'm seeing is this person on this side, right now you might be here. Okay, so you're here and you're working to bring that project, that launch, whatever that is, forward into manifestation or materialization. Whatever is the thing that you said you were going to do, it's a vision, it's a dream, it's an aspiration, it's an ambition, it's something that you're meant to bring forward, to bring into material world, okay? And right now you're here. You're meant to bring it into this. Your single greatest triumph is bringing it into manifestation, because here's what's interesting. Through that process, we talked about this being like the hero or heroine's journey. It's really about discovering of and realizing self. You realize union of self. You realize more the wholeness of yourself. You start actualizing these other parts of you that right now might be a little bit quiet, or a little bit like the switch is just kind of turned off. And through this journeying, you awaken these other elements and parts of you that want to come forward, that also want to be realized, that also want to be actualized, that also want to have a say, that want to be expressed. So you bring about a greater, deeper inner union of self, or greater wholeness of self, or greater expression of self. Now, I do also want to say, I'm also seeing specifically, although this could come back and the opposite for some of you, that some of you tend to default to more feminine energy, whether you're a man or a woman, it doesn't matter. Like a man could be a Cancer, Cancer's a feminine energy, right? And none of these are hard and fast rules either, like they're constructs. It helps us make sense of the world. But you might default to your feminine energy, and a part of your path is realizing that masculine within, the part that can plan and strategize and build and execute and follow through and be consistent. So you might be really good at all the other stuff of dreaming and feeling and honoring and kind of energy and vibes and kind of that spiritual, mental, emotional work. You might be really good at that, a lot of that stuff. And you might be good about daydreaming about this launch and wanting, desire, all that stuff. But when it comes to actually doing the thing, putting where your money where your mouth is, executing and follow through, you really struggle. So part of you are meant to, some of you are meant to come into greater union or wholeness of self by realizing the greater masculine counterpart within. Now, that might not resonate for everyone. I would say that's the primary energy that I'm getting. It could be the other way around, where you are in your masculine and you are learning to bring about your inner feminine. Some of you, because of this reconciliation and connection, you will actually also materialize a potential lover, romance partner, soulmate, long-term partner. Some of you might already be in a relationship and you're hearing that, and you're in a relationship that isn't as satisfactory. And this actually brings about your truer soulmate. I do believe that there are many soulmates, depending on where we're at and what path and alignment and all of that. But this person brings about someone who's much more fulfilling for you, ultimately. And so that would be an option for you, whether you're single or partnered. Eventually, once you are able to materialize this, it's going to materialize the other side of you. And then eventually, too, even 6 months after that, or a year, two for some of you, you might materialize this other person who enters your world. Now, if that doesn't land for you, if that's scary for you and you don't want it, you have free will. You get to say no. You don't have to say yes. But I do feel like for the majority of you, it's definitely feminine. Why? Because it's a daydream that you've held on to, a desire that you're yearning for, that you haven't materialized and executed and accomplished just yet. So that's what's going to be for most of you. Now, the final message here is a huge part of the importance here for you, or significance for you. For some of you, it's advice, like letting it be playful, letting it be enjoyable. But I feel like some of this is the message here, and this playfulness card is also about that many of you, you just want to make sure that it's something that's playful and honors your full creative expression, that honors your inner artist, your inner wonder child, your inner child. And so your single greatest triumph yet is, to summarize, it's bringing forward this project, this path, this vision, this dream, this aspiration, breaking through that wall, and then carrying through whatever it is that you actualize through the breakthrough of that wall, to accepting the help if it's there and actually letting them help you. And that ultimately you actualize another part and piece of yourself that brings you into greater fulfillment, but also wholeness. And this very well could bring a lover or soulmate or a new partner into your life if you don't have one already. It could also bring an upgrade to your current relationship. And last but not least, this should be something that is playful and enjoyable for you. It doesn't have to be this big, heavy weight that you carry. It very much can be the thing that gives you zest, that gives you life, that gives you vitality. But for it to be that instead of the pressure, you're going to actually have to give it expression, give it voice, and let it start coming into play into your reality. So that's your single greatest triumph card, pile 3. Woo! That was a long reading. If this lands for you, I encourage you to like, subscribe, press the bell icon. That way you receive notifications moving forward anytime a reading pops up. I do want to let you know, as always, as I already did, I offer both personal readings as well as coaching programs. You can check out those details below or at erritygreen.com/erritygreen.com. Thank you, card pile 3. All right. Card pile 4. I was considering turning it off and taking a break, but we'll just buzz on through here. So card pile 4. Card pile 4. If I said 3, that was my mistake. We have 4 card piles today. Card pile 4. Your single greatest triumph is coming into greater self-trust, coming into greater union, connection, and wholeness with yourself. No longer fighting with yourself, no longer denying yourself, no longer denying your own desires, your own whims and fancies and passions, no longer denying your inner intuition, your inner voice. It's really coming into greater union with yourself and trusting yourself. It's like letting yourself have the say, letting yourself have the nerve. It's kind of like being and doing you to a certain degree, but it's like coming into that greater trust instead of fighting yourself so hard. So for some of you, you've been on a path of, it feels like maybe like a, I don't want to say weak ego, but like a weaker ego or a weaker ego identity where you might not be completely sure of yourself. You might not even be 100% on who you are. You might not be 100% on really what you want or what your desires are or your dreams are or who you want to be with or where you want to live. You might not be clear on a lot of things. And if that's part of it, and then on top of that, you also can't trust yourself fully, it's almost like, you know, you're a buoy in a torrential storm in the ocean and who knows what's going to happen from there. Good luck, you know? And the reason I feel like you have a weak ego primarily now at this point when you're catching this reading is because of your doubts and your lack of certainty and your lack of trust. So it's almost like any ego that you did have, you've whittled away over time, where at one point you might have been stronger egos, or maybe you didn't grow up from a childhood where you weren't fully honored or seen or heard or validated. And so like for some of you that might be the case, right? And so then you develop a weak ego because you weren't seen, heard, or validated. So because of that, you didn't have a mirror to sort of reflect back to you and validate and then objectify your truth, your being, your existence. And so there was no strong ego there. It was weak. Does that make sense? And so some of you might have developed a stronger ego with defense mechanisms and so on and so forth. All right, so card pile 4, apologize for the momentary gap there, which you probably won't notice very much of, but my memory ran out, so I had to do some fumbling around to get back in the groove. So where we were talking about like what can form a weak ego and how, if you don't relate to that, I'll share a little bit about how we can weaken our ego as an example. So I talked a little bit about as a child, if you aren't validated, if your beingness, if your existence isn't validated, we can proceed into the rest of our lives with a weak ego, just kind of unaware of who we are, what our feelings are. It's that whole feeling of like, I don't matter, or my dreams don't matter, my desires don't matter, do I even exist? You know, that level of invisibility. So that can create a weak ego. And some of you might have experienced that and then went into adulthood with a lot of doubts, and here you are, and now we're on this reading. Now for some of you that won't resonate as much, and you might feel like you had a strong ego, or maybe there was a time that you did feel pretty strong or strong on your own identity. And what can weaken an ego is to whittle away at that with self-doubt and uncertainty and fighting ourselves and denying ourselves too, denying ourselves of our own desires, denying ourselves what we really want, denying ourselves of our own boundaries. So there's a lot of ways we can weaken an ego that might have been strong. So all of that to say, it sounds like we're on the path here of talking about your greatest triumph, your single greatest triumph being really knowing yourself, preserving yourself, honoring yourself, and trusting yourself. But we'll see with the rest of the layers of the reading, of course. But so far, it sounds like you have a history of really fighting yourself, and really just, some of you too, I'm feeling like you beat yourself up. I feel like some of you don't see yourself for who you are, for all that you are. You don't see your full potential. It's almost like you see yourself with a much more limited scope than what you truly are, and you're not even able to see who you truly are. So it's like you're not even seeing who you are as you are. And I think a lot of us do that, but some of you might have a really intense inner critic. You might have an inner punisher. You might not be easy on yourself. You might have high standards and expectations for yourself. You might have struggled with perfectionism at different times, or maybe even now. But in one way or another, you might have an inner dictator. Your mind isn't easy on you. It might be hard on you, and you might not be very nice to yourself. You might not have a whole lot of compassion for yourself. Now, when we're talking single greatest triumph, though, it does sound like you ultimately release this and you come into greater knowingness of self, like we shared, but also honoring of self, trusting of self. Part of honoring self is trusting oneself, listening to oneself, having compassion for oneself, seeing oneself fully, really seeing your gifts, your value, your worth and abilities. So there is something here about coming into your greatness or knowingness of your own greatness, knowingness of yourself, as well as trusting yourself. So let's see what else we have here. Yeah. So I feel like a lot of you might be different from the norm. You might consider yourself the black sheep of the family, the outsider, the outlier. Maybe you felt like you weren't appreciated or didn't fully belong. Maybe you felt like you were, you know, a minority voice. You just never haven't, maybe you never have been fully like seen, again, heard, recognized. My computer's been funky today too. And so, again, it's kind of reminding me of that childhood thing we already talked a little bit about, where you might have even encountered in childhood people who didn't fully see you or recognize you, right? So you don't fully see and recognize yourself because you never had that mirrored for you. You never had that validated for you. So what I would start to do, and this is just a side note, I would like to continue more deeply into the cards that are here, but inviting people into your world or circle that can see you, all of you, the whole of you. If you're on this channel, that means you are of a mature awareness and mindset, that you have a higher order perspective, that you are conscious and awakened to some degree. I would encourage you to be more selective with who you allow into your circle and who you allow to give you feedback, who you ask for feedback from or support from. And it feels like some of you might have already dealt with being alone at different times. So if I say that and you're like, well, shoot, I already have so little. It might be because, again, people can't see you correctly if they can't see themselves correctly. So if you're inviting feedback from people who can't fully see or appreciate you, you're going to invite more of the same, and again, more self-punishment as a result. So you are being invited, as like a side note, to make sure that you invite only those people who see your highest, who value you, who value your worth, who value what you have to offer and contribute, and can see that all of you, the whole of you, and can see your greatness. Because more than anything, what you need after a lifetime of not having it is having people see and value your greatness and validate that so that you can begin to own that for yourself. You know, we hear a lot of teachings nowadays all about doing it for yourself, self-sourcing, sovereignty. All of that is well and good. All of it's precious medicine and a necessity for this path, for any path really, if it's going to be healthy, mature, and conscious, and support your self-expression and actualization. However, if we just focus on doing it for ourselves, for some of you, you never had it for yourself, or from other people for yourself. So you don't even know what it's like. So your medicine, I feel like a lot of your healing and medicine is going to be in the context of relationships, of healing relationships of other people, that you're going to learn more about yourself and be able to begin to value yourself and your inherent worth and all that you are and have ever been within a container with another person. So that might not be relevant for all of you, but I feel like it's going to explain to you at the very least, even if that's not a possibility right now, it's going to make things make sense. Like it's going to be like, okay, that's why I haven't really found satisfactory or fulfilling relationships, or things haven't been fully meaningful for me, or whatever. You know, I've never really had someone who could fully see my worth and value. And if you didn't have that as a kid, again, you weren't able to see it for yourself. If it was never validated for you, and you're an innocent child, you don't have any necessarily ego structure or identity right now, you're just kind of living in awareness, pure awareness, bliss, innocence, and joy. Most babies enter the world that way, just completely, right, innocent awareness, and there's nothing really identified yet or boxed in or confined. There's no limitation, but you never have anyone validate you and say, yes, you matter. Yes, your desires matter. Yes, your goals matter. Yes, gosh, what you're saying really matters. Wow, that's a really good point. Yes, whatever your thought, your idea, your contribution, whatever it is, whatever thing that you might have offered, or just being you, you are precious. You matter just because you're you. If you did not have someone validating you like that consistently and or regularly, or at least well enough as a child, how are you going to be able to do that for yourself? So, of course, then we have our card pile 4s, people with weaker egos, where, again, you don't know really exactly who you are, what you want, what you stand for, what you don't. You might have a semblance of it, or you've been there before, but maybe not now. One way or another, if you're on this sort of thread or wavelength, whichever form it takes, I would bet that you have difficulty trusting yourself, really knowing yourself, and really honoring yourself. And that's what this is about, right? Your single greatest triumph is coming into that greater connection, communion, union with self, and honoring of self. It's a deeper level of self-love, really, is what it is, for someone who was never able to experience it so far because it was never mirrored for them in relationship. And so much of our life comes into beingness, like it comes to fruition based on other people, especially as a child when we are learning the world and learning constructs and paradigms and everything for the first time. We're just making things make sense. Oh, this makes sense because of this. And our mind's finding associations so that it can create and mold and shape this person that we're going to be. And if we never have anyone ever, again, model or mirror, validate our worthiness, our value, that our contribution matters, that we matter, what we say matters, our desires matter. If it was always our desires are discounted, or your contribution is discounted, what you want is discounted, your needs are discounted, what's going to happen is, number one, is we're not going to believe that we're worthy and valuable. We're also not going to believe that our contributions and offerings are meaningful. And we're also not going to have any clue. Well, we're not going to, number one, value our desires, needs, goals, dreams, stuff like that. We're not going to even value them. But we're also not even going to know what they are. You might not even know what they are because of this lack of mirroring, lack of validation of your own existence. So number one, I feel like a huge part of your path is coming into containers and relationships that are conscious in nature to support you and being able to see you for all that you are, to be given that message that you matter, your ideas matter, your thoughts matter, your desires, your needs matter, you matter. Everything about you matters. To have that, to begin to build that solid, healthy ego sense of self. That's your greatest triumph. Your single greatest triumph is going to come from that. I'm feeling like most of you are either already on this journey, maybe even at the closer to the further end. But some of you, I also feel like you're more at that beginning where you're aware of all of these things, but haven't really known how to jump this hurdle, right? How to master this. You know, how do I master my self-doubt? How do I master my lack of trust in my own intuition? How do I master not honoring myself and setting boundaries and ensuring my own welfare and well-being? You know, why don't I honor what I need and what I want? Why do I have to force myself to value what I say or try to convince other people to hear me or to prove my worth? And all of that stuff, all those different manifestations and flavors is all the same thing, which is what we've been talking about. So again, your single greatest triumph is coming into greater knowingness of self and even solidifying that into like a healthy ego identity. You might not have had that. So part of your work too is getting to know your own desires, getting to know your own dreams, what your own needs. Start with that. Sometimes, hey, I can relate to this to a certain degree where it's like, sometimes I don't even know what I want, but I can tell you what, right now, I always know what I need. Okay, so start with that. That can be the clearest way to start accessing who you are, what you want. It's to just look at what you need. We all know when we need rest. We all know when we need food. We all know when we need a shower. We all know when we need to be heard. We all know when we need a hand to help us. I mean, those are even more abstract than the basic ones of biological needs. But again, start building it with those biological needs. I need food, I'm going to drink. I need eat. I need hydration, I'm going to drink. Start with those basic biological needs, right? Maslow's hierarchy. Start there and then go up. Okay, so more abstract needs like this isn't even abstract, but I mean, people might not even recognize it when they need it. I know I have it at different times. Like, oh, I need a shower. That happens for a lot of moms and when they're taking care of young kids. Oh, wait, I need a shower. I matter. Shocking. And then you get to other things like, oh, wow, I really need a friend who can support me or, you know, offer emotional support, right? That's even bigger. All of that to say, card pile 4, that's your journey then, right? You're starting to get to know yourself, and that's going to start with knowing your needs. Then once all your needs start to be met pretty consistently, your desires will start to come clear. I even talk about this in my book, Your Soul Figure Year. It's really hard to know to your desires when if you're always speaking from need. If you're still coming from a place of lack and scarcity and need, all of your desires are actually going to be wrapped up in your needs because your needs have to be met first. Again, Maslow's hierarchy, right? If you don't know Maslow's hierarchy, for whatever reason, Google that, get to know that. It's only relevant to the extent that it is, right? But it can be useful, at least in support of ourselves and seeing where we're at in our state of evolution, I guess. But getting to know those needs. And once all those needs are met, and they're met well enough and consistently, you'll get to a place where you start seeing, oh, I want this. There is something that I want. And I know very clearly what it is what it is I want now. So you're just starting to get to know the language of you, but that's going to start with those smaller things like getting to know your needs and advocating for those needs, setting boundaries to ensure those needs are met, and so on and so forth. And again, a lot of your healing too, a lot of your growth and evolution too, is going to come into in the context of relationships, other people, containers with other people, because it's going to help you start to see that, oh, I matter, through the validation of someone else who says that you do, because you never got it as a child. Okay, so, and back to, I don't know how I got back to this, but how you're like the outsider, you don't belong, you feel like the black sheep. And so all this did was compound and add more to your story of, oh, I don't matter, and oh, I'm not like everybody else, and no one can understand me, no one will ever see me. So you might have been through an experience in your life, or even now, where you feel like you're the oddball out, you might be different from everybody. And oftentimes I say that's kind of the starseed flavor, where you might have been from you very well might have been from a different planet and incarnated on Earth, and that's why you feel different. You don't have to vibe with that or even connect with that, but if you do, I tend to see and feel this kind of story for starseeds. So of course, a part of your greatest triumph is really owning that. It's integrating that part of yourself. There's a healing here that wants to happen for your inner child, who did always feel maybe left out or abandoned or unseen or neglected, maybe even bullied and made fun of for some of you. For some of you, I'm feeling like it's more like your family just not being seen and heard. So there is some self-care and self-love and some self-loving that can be done, some nurturing for that part of you, which can happen just through triggers and everyday experiences. But part of it, again, is meeting that inner child's needs then. What do they need? What did they need then that they never got, that you can now give that part of yourself, right? Even if no one else validates and you don't have those containers and relationships and other people that I've been speaking to this whole time. Most of us who are in that position don't yet have that. That's part of like jumping the hurdle, is when you start to experience those other relationships that can then validate you, and the healing then accentuates and accelerates and all of that. But in the very beginning, it might just be you. So you start meeting that need of the inner child, that your voice does matter, so you're going to speak what you have to say. Your desires do matter, so you're going to follow through on achieving whatever that desire is, or bringing it into your world. Your needs do matter, so you're going to assert that. You're going to make sure that you meet your need. Okay? So I'll give you an example. In my life as a mom, I can kind of get lost in this kind of identity, specifically in motherhood, although it's come up in different ways over the years, but especially in motherhood, it's been difficult to like rediscover myself as an ego identity within that relationship. And lately, I've been really endeavoring toward meeting my needs in a fuller, better way, such that the needs actually get met. And so what I say sometimes to my son when he asks for the extra thing, right? Oh, I need you to do this. Could you do that? Could you do it? I mean, there are endless demands, especially when they get to that age like 4, 5, 6, where they want you to do everything. They're not fully independent yet, but they are well aware enough to like want all the things and see all the things and need all the things, at least in their eyes. And so you're pretty much their slave, more or less. You're their eyes, their arms, their feet. They can't reach this. They don't know how to do that yet, right? So many things they can't do, but they're aware of, and you're the person who's there. So we ask him for a lot of things, and I've gotten to the point now where, I said I used to give in. I would say, I really don't want to. My body's saying no, but I would get up and turn the light on again for him so he could go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, or I'd get him the glass of ice water, for the 3rd or 4th time, or I would scratch his back for another minute, for another minute, for another minute. And I'm like, okay, no one's scratching this homegirl's back. And not that matters, but my point is my needs are still being left unmet. And so I've gotten to the point where saying, my body just can't do it. My body is saying no. My body is saying, please take care of me, Errity. Like, I need to take care of me. Now that I say it that way, my son fully respects it, because he's starting to see, oh, okay, my needs matter, because he's certainly been validated with his needs. But he's saying that, oh, mommy's needs matter too. And of course, it's a great model for him, so he can grow up and model other women's needs, other mothers' needs, his girlfriend, or if he chooses a girlfriend, or whoever his partner is, he can start to use that as a model for all these other relationships. Oh, they have needs too. Like, it's not just all about me. So I have started to assert that. And that's just one example of integration, right? Starting to integrate yourself into your life, into your experience, integrating that you matter. So, also integrating that awareness of like the black sheep, the outsider, finding ways to heal and integrate that. We talked a little bit about nurturing that inner child, taking care of the inner child, validating the inner child, honoring its needs and desires, and all the ways that we might not have received as a kid, but we can do for ourselves now. So that's part of it. And the other part is finding ways to integrate the part of yourself that feels like an outsider. I feel like the medicine is going to be different for everybody who connects with this message. You know, some people, the medicine is starting to find, again, those bonds and relationships where they do matter to those people and then they are validated. Some people, right, it's no longer participating in relationships where they don't matter and they're continually shown that they aren't seen, that they aren't valued, so on and so forth. So that might be clearing out some of those relationships. Some of it's going to be using this being different, this uniqueness as a way that you walk in the world, like really owning it. Perhaps it serves you in some way in your occupation, your career, your business, your work. It certainly supports you in your life purpose. It's very much a meant to be thing, but you find ways to integrate it as you go on throughout your life, where you start realizing that everything was purposeful, right? That this was meant to be, that you are meant to be this way with these particular qualities and characteristics and attributes, that they matter and they're here for a purpose and for a reason. And when applied in a certain way or integrated, then they support you in something. They catapult you maybe to success, or they support you in some way. Okay, so it's part of owning that, as part of rejecting and disowning and suppressing and silencing that part of ourselves that's different or unusual. It's about owning it and being more authentic and allowing ourselves to own that and embody that and occupy that. So your single greatest triumph is owning your uniqueness, owning what defines you as you, owning what makes you unique, owning your own identity, right? So we've been talking about that a lot. It's owning yourself, doing you, basically. Yeah, again. So a couple of final pieces here in terms of your greatest triumph yet. Your single greatest triumph, again, what is already with you? So we've already talked about that. You know, recognizing and honoring who you are, what you want, what you need. All of those things matter. What you have to say matters. Your thoughts matter. Your contributions matter. Your body matters. Your boundaries matter. Your dreams matter. All of that matters. So beginning to give some solidity to those by honoring them. If you don't execute and make choices and decisions aligned with those needs and desires, they will continue to sort of live in the ethereal or the energetic, and they won't become a solid, healthy sense of ego still. They'll still be kind of whimsical and, again, floating like a buoy in a torrential rainstorm in the ocean. It's like, well, I mean, who are you? We don't know. So how do you begin to build and anchor in that sense of self, honoring those needs, honoring those desires, honoring what you have to say, honoring your thoughts, your contributions, your ideas, taking action on each of those things in each of those areas. And over time, as you're trusting yourself and taking action and following through and executing, you're going to build that healthy sense of self. And, right, so owning your uniqueness and identity is part of it too, where it's like not just building it, but then owning you as you, like owning your story, owning that you're different. Thank God I'm different, because this is how I like to be and this is how I like to do it. It's going to inform your greater life path and purpose, even in terms of dreams and aspirations that you might have for yourself. Owning your uniqueness is going to be important for that. Having a strong ego identity is going to be important for that. And the final piece too, again, is letting love in. Letting other people love you, letting other people validate you, letting other people see you. So a lot of you have felt so sort of worthless because you didn't have any healthy sense or awareness of who you are, that, again, you might have had relationships that honored or validated you or could see you fully, and you've pushed away people, maybe even, perhaps some of you, not all of you. It's either you pushed them away, or you didn't even know it existed, or you didn't pursue it. Relationships that can see the whole of you, that value you, that tell you that you matter, that demonstrate that you matter, that show you that you matter. And a part of your healing path and part of your healing journey, your greatest triumph, is really letting people in that can demonstrate that for you and show you and validate that for you. So card pile 4, to sum this up, your single greatest triumph is coming into greater knowingness of yourself, coming into greater trust with yourself, honoring yourself, defending yourself, demonstrating yourself, expressing yourself. A part of this is that greater self-love. We were to sort of encapsulate all of this and try to give it a label or a name, we'd say it's a deeper sense and honoring of yourself. It's self-love. It's also honoring the parts of you that are perceived as different, unusual, unique, or authentic, and really owning that as a part of your truth, a part of your path. Owning it well enough such that you can allow it to inform your direction, inform your choices, inform your decisions, as well as the relationships that you'll choose, or the career path that you'll take, or whatever that is. This is meant to inform something for you. It's meant to fuel something for you. Your difference, your uniqueness isn't there for like by accident or by coincidence. It's meant to support you in some way to bring about your greater self-expression and even, again, your life path and purpose, even greater destiny on this planet. Your uniqueness is purposeful, and it's meant to be integrated, to be a part of you, to be celebrated, to matter, to be validated, not something that's meant to be shelved and thrown out, right? Baby out with the bathwater kind of thing. Last but not least, you're meant to learn to celebrate yourself, know yourself, love yourself within the context of healing and loving, fulfilling relationships. And these are all forms of relationships, not just romantic, although of course that tends to be one that most people seek or desire. You know, you're meant to have containers with other people that see you, that validate you, that love you, that celebrate you. That's where you're going to find a lot of this healing too. What you can't do on your own, which you'll start, right? You'll start validating yourself, your needs, all that stuff we already talked about. But what you can't do on your own, or it's like you've done all that you can on your own, the next layer, the next level is having people in your life and your relationships be able to mirror everything back and all that work that you've already been doing with yourself. So best of luck to you, card pile 4. If this resonates, if this lands, I encourage you to like, subscribe, do press the bell icon. That way you receive notifications every single time a reading pops up. I'd love to hear from you. I also like to let you know that I do offer both personal readings as well as coaching programs. You can check out those details below or at erritygreen.com. Thank you, card pile 4.